Hi, welcome back for another round of some tips for working with your English learners. This time of year, back to school time, or setting up classrooms, just getting started in the first couple weeks, we always get the question of what makes for a language-rich classroom? How do I know that my classroom is accessible and ready for my English learners? What can I be thinking about and doing in my classroom setup and in my routines that will be most beneficial to my English learners, especially those new faces who are here in school for the first time. So what we did was create a checklist for you. So I want to share that checklist and walk through each item and explain a little bit. Okay, so here is our checklist that you can download from our website, so you can have a copy of the PDF yourself. I'm just going to scroll through it with you and talk through our 13 things every academic language-focused classroom should have to start the year. All right, so up first, a student list with the most recent access scores or other English language proficiency scores with listening, speaking, reading, writing, and overall. So whether you're an access state or you use some other assessment, you should have annual assessment scores that give you an overall score and then a breakdown for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. I'm asking you to make sure you have that whole package, the breakdown, because later as we start talking about differentiation and you start into really planning and getting to know your students and what they can do, those scores are going to help you, because what you do for them in reading is going to be different than what you need to do for them in writing or speaking or listening. They'll be in different places in those 4 skills. So getting the breakdown of the scores is a great place to start, where you can sort your students in your mind, find their strengths, find their areas of growth, and start thinking about how that's going to impact your planning and differentiation. We can get into that in another segment. So just get those in your hands, get familiar with them, and establish that relationship with your ESL person or your CLD person. Make sure you have that together. You want to set up an area for an interactive word wall. So your word wall shouldn't be just, here's letter B, and then here are a list of B words under it. You want your word wall to be something that you're building together. So early in the year, you want to just set up the shell of your word wall. Put up the alphabet, get it ready. Your word wall should be things that you're introducing the words together. There's a visual that goes with it, a picture, a clip art, something from your classroom. So if you're putting the word pencil, you can tape a pencil on there. Something that makes it meaningful. And the interactive part comes in where you are sharing this with your students as you're building it, so they know exactly what is going on the word wall. And then while you're teaching, while they're writing, while they're reading, you're referring them to the word wall as they need words to spell or to say or to put into their writing or their speaking. Which leads to that routine for introducing new vocabulary. Think about up front. When I introduce new words, some words are going to be less important. They're important right now to understand this lesson, but they're less important in the big picture. Those we're just going to introduce, show a visual, we'll talk about it, make sure they get the gist for now. But what about those words that you really want to make sure they master? You want to have a routine for that. There are a lot of different vocabulary routines out there from Marzano or Kate Kinsella, some other things, and that can be a topic for a future blog for us. But look up vocabulary routines. Think about introducing vocabulary in a consistent way every time you do it, so students know exactly what's coming and what to expect. It really helps them remember. Vocabulary or interactive notebooks. So as you're introducing these new words and you're putting them on the word wall, some kind of interactive notebook or vocabulary book for your students to be able to keep track of the words for themselves. Create a personal dictionary will be a great resource to have in place, whether it be a composition book or a metal ring with cards that they're using as a personal dictionary. Whatever it is you come up with, some kind of reference would be perfect for them. So beginner, intermediate, and advanced sentence frames prepared and available for common ideas. So if we are agreeing or disagreeing or comparing, contrasting, there are frames, sentence frames, and structures that we use all the time. Blank is like blank because, blank is different from blank because, and there are certain structures we always use. So if you think about a beginning sentence, an intermediate level sentence, and an advanced, more complex level sentence, for all of those different high frequency purposes or language functions, and you have those prepared ahead of time and you show them to students, whether it's via an anchor chart or again a little personal reference dictionary, there are tons of those already prepared out in the internet world. So if you search for sentence frames, language functions, you'll find a ton of them. And again, future blog posts, but we'll go into that in more detail at another time. But for right now, you can do a search and get yourself started. But having those prepared now will save you a lot of time down the road when students can just look up or look in their notebook and see them. Set of thinking verb placemats and magnets. Those language function words, the compare, contrast, identify, justify, all of those things you do all the time in class. With the thinking verb placemats and magnets, you can introduce those terms, introduce those language functions with a consistent definition, a consistent icon, and where whenever students see that, they know what you want them to do. And that'll be your beginning of the year vocabulary. So here's a peek. Here's a couple versions of what our thinking verb placemats and magnets look like. We use these in our outcomes. We use them in our schedule on the board where we put what we're doing for the day. We use them on our PowerPoints or whatever we're projecting on the screen to tell students, are we going to identify, are we going to explain, are we going to justify? And then also on any kind of worksheets or papers that students receive, we identify the thinking verb as well. Goal setting template for their language proficiency. So last week's blog was where we shared, Adriana was talking about some goal setting lessons and goal setting templates that you can use. So if you go back and look at our last week's blog entry, you'll be able to download those goal setting lessons and the recording sheets and the lesson plans. And this is taking students to sit down and look at those scores that you got from your online system or your ESL teacher, and sit down with students and explain to them what those scores mean. Right now you're a 3 in reading. That means you should be able to do this. My goal for you is to move up to a 4 and to a 5. To get to a 4 and a 5, these are some things that I need to see you doing. These are things we're going to practice, and we're going to move you toward those higher scores, and we'll move you toward being very proficient in reading and English. And students can really think about what they're doing and what they need to work on, because whenever we say, oh, we just have to be a better reader, but what is that? You know, it's really frustrating to students to be like, I'm trying, but I don't know what that is. And so with our goal setting templates, we can get more explicit. Pull out those WIDA can-do descriptors, pull out the performance definitions, or whatever your state uses to describe the language levels, and help students understand what exactly they need to add to their tool belt, to their repertoire, to be able to move up those levels. Bilingual labeling of the room, always great for your newcomers or lowest English proficiency students, is to get those nouns labeled and to recognize other languages. Whether you have those languages in your room or not, you can label things in your room, and it not only helps your beginners, it really helps set a culture of, we recognize that There are different cultures, different languages, different ways to say things, and we're going to open our minds to that this year in our classroom. And we're going to recognize the world around us and how learning about different languages and cultures will bring a richness to our classroom. Something like a feelings board for younger students and for beginning proficiency level students, just a way to get a check to see how they're doing, how they're feeling. Today I feel, and then using emojis, using pictures, using facial expression, pictures, whatever it is you can find that will help students express themselves, especially in those transitions, like when they're switching classes for the older students, or coming back from lunch or recess or a special, and you can tell something's up, something must have happened while they were away from you, or they come in the morning and something's just not right. It's a great thing to have ready to help students express what's going on with them. Productive partnering routines with visuals. So productive partnering, we can also get into deeper in other blogs and courses, but this is how we're going to turn and talk, how we're going to think pair share. How are we going to work together when I say talk to a partner or talk at your table? You want to think of a routine for that. So again, I would look up Kate Kinsella, Productive Partnering. She has some routines that she suggests that are very successful and easy to teach students. Also, lots of routines and protocols available on the School Reform Initiative website. Just build some structure around how students will interact in your classroom. And again, building that structure up front is going to save you time down the road when you're not redirecting students. They know exactly what to do. Creating visuals for common classroom directions. The line up, get a pencil, get your homework out, put your things away, whatever it is that you do in your classroom every day. Make sure that you have some kind of visual agenda, whether it's an anchor chart, or a card on a desk, or something in the front of their notebook where there's a visual step-by-step of what happens in our classroom with different directions. So if you ever have a beginning student or a new student to your classroom throughout the year who needs a little redirection, they're not sure what to do, you have it right there. You can point to it and say, here's where we are. This is what I want you to do. Plan out common directions with more academic language, right? Up the rigor. So I've seen this a lot, especially in the younger grades, but a lot in the older grades as well. Where can we model some more sophisticated vocabulary? How can we up the language? So instead of everybody come to the carpet, how might we say that? You might sit on the perimeter of the rug. You might use different action words. Everybody saunter to the carpet, gallop to the carpet, hop to the carpet. Just things that will add a little spice to the vocabulary in your room, or the sophistication. You know, we're going to discuss this topic instead of let's talk about, right? All those opportunities you have to raise the proficiency level, just some in your classroom to model and to help get students thinking about being more academic speakers. And again, determine your student conversation routines, visuals, and step-by-step. So when I say turn to a partner, what exactly happens? First, you do this, then you do this. First, you turn to your partner, then you make eye contact, then you smile at your partner, and then you start with our frame, and then you add additional ideas after. All of those oral directions get lost in the mix as students are processing, what is she saying, what's happening, what's the guy next to me doing, what's for lunch. It's all jumbled in there. So if you make those routines visual, again, anchor charts, visuals, images, anything to make those routines more concrete, it will save you a lot of time and frustration in management and giving directions down the road. So there's our quick 13 things you can think about in setting up your classroom routines and space to be more English learner friendly, especially more beginning English learner friendly. I know this was a quick blow through, but enough to get you started, and I promise we'll keep coming back to the different topics in more detail in days to come. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.